Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Amicable Divorce Network Podcast. I'm your host, Tracy Ann Moore-Grant. I'm the founder of the Amicable Divorce Network, and if you've been following along, we are following along our book, Divorce Amicably, Your Roadmap to Resolution, that was just published here in 2025, that gives you very realistic and actionable steps from our vetted professionals on how you can divorce well, with good information, and outside of court. Today we are covering Chapter 70, which was written by one of our fabulous members, Dara Marias from Las Vegas. And so she has done some really great chapters. She has a holistic family law practice, really wanting to help people, help the whole family, and has just the type of attitude that we love here at Amicable Divorce Network. And Chapter 70 is CoParenting 101, Nurturing Children Through the Divorce Process, which is something we're very passionate about, is to put children at the forefront of your decision making. Dara, thank you so much for doing this very important topic and joining me today on the podcast.
Yeah, I'm delighted to be here. This I really think is what drew me to having a holistic divorce practice. I wanted families to be okay after divorce, and integrating these concepts I feel like is so important for people just to learn about.
Mm-hmm. It's always nice when you meet with clients and they are asking questions about how I can help my children, as opposed to, some other more self-centered questions. And so we're very passionate about focusing people on kids to help them through divorce. One of the topics I know that you're passionate about helping people with is, sort of just how to make decisions, how to focus yourself, and that comes to the topic of mindfulness. One of the later chapters in the book, it's 78 if you want to go read that, but talk about how that's sort of the foundation of decision making in divorce.
So I think the best way to think about it is, if you have a value of what you're trying to accomplish and you have the ability to have some emotional agility so you're not being pulled by your emotions, you're able to choose your actions, and you can choose actions that go along with the value. So that's kind of a common theme that I talk to clients about. What we're trying to accomplish here is making good choices. What you say, what you do, what you text, what you email, everything. Every one of those is an opportunity to make a choice that is towards your value. So in the context of children, our value is for them to be okay, to thrive, yes, the divorce is happening. Yes, this is a challenge in their life, but that's okay, because, challenge is the fertilizer for personal growth.
Right.
And in a weird way, if you can help your children during divorce interact with a challenge in a healthy way, they're going to be stronger later in life. Yeah. They're not going to face their first challenge in their 20s. They're going to actually have some skills to do that. So when I'm talking about mindfulness, and we can go into a lot more detail when we talk about Chapter 78, but what we're really discussing is having an awareness of your emotions, how they're impacting you, learning ways to manage them in a healthy way so that when you experience them, which is completely normal, you can then say, okay, I need to make sure I'm in an emotionally neutral state before I do something, before I act, before I say. So this is what we're talking about with mindfulness. What we'll talk about today are what we're going to, when we've employed mindfulness, what our value is, what we're going after accomplishing.
Yeah. And so a lot of people listening to this may be, thinking, oh my gosh, I am just not self-aware enough to, come from a place of, mindfulness and decision making. And I think that's one of the reasons that we really try to push people to members of the Amicable Divorce Network, because they will be having those conversations with you. And sometimes they're very candid. Sometimes I'm having to say to clients, you wanted a child-centered divorce. What is the best decision for the children? Because it is so emotional when you're talking about custody, the marital home, all sorts of different issues. So working with the right professional can focus you in the right way on your decisions, what are the best ones, and getting you to the end point. So co-parenting and nurturing children, through the divorce, your first tip, I think, is so essential. And that is transitioning to a business-like relationship with your co-parent.
Absolutely. This is the number one pivot. We are used to dealing with a spouse in a certain way. Mm-hmm. It has a high level of disclosure, a high level of emotionality, we're sharing everything. Mm-hmm. And then suddenly there's a divorce, and now this is no longer your spouse. Yeah. So the question becomes, how am I supposed to interact with this person? And you don't necessarily have a model for this. Most people, this is their first divorce. They don't know any different. So the model I like to share with people is to say, well, think about how you would interact with somebody at work. Would you tell them every detail about your life? No, you would not. Would you be
Some people might.
Would you be rude to them if you were angry? No, you'd find a way to say it in a professional way. You'd control and be respectful, and you'd have an aspect of politeness. You'd narrow your topics. You're not necessarily talking to a coworker about every detail, but you're focused in on what your project might be with them, which in this case is your child. Mm-hmm. So what we're really talking about here is having that model that has low disclosure, but high levels of respect. And if you just think and ask yourself, would I say this to someone at work? Would I say this to the vice president of the department? The answer is no. Yeah. Then you want to rethink how you would say or do something. So the business relationship, great model.
Yeah. And I always tell people, whatever you write down, a text message, an email, are you comfortable if in the future that's read out in court or read by your children? Is that something that you would be fine with them reading, if they get into your phone or something? Is it a, good communication? The next tip that you have is implementing co-parent CPR.
Oh, I love this so much because it's easy to remember.
Yeah.
And I want to just circle back to one thing before I move on. Mm-hmm. So how I said at the beginning that this is an opportunity for your children to interact with a challenge. This is also an opportunity for you as a parent to model what it looks like to interact with a challenge. Mm-hmm. Think about it. Yeah. As parents, we model all the time the behavior we hope for our children. Mm-hmm. So when they're watching you, if they know you're kind of frustrated, but you're also not raising your voice, you're not yelling, you're not swearing, you're not doing any of that, they're taking that in. So let's talk about the CPRs. Yes. First of all, I did not invent the term. This was invented by Lois Gold, and she's a social worker. I hate to say how many years ago I first read about Lois Gold. I think we're north of 30 now. Mm-hmm. But I love this. It's super easy to remember. If you do nothing else in your divorce, but remember the CPRs, you're going to be well ahead. So let's talk about them. The first one, the C, is continuity. Children do best when there is continuity in their lives. Now, you might be thinking, well, wait a second. There's nothing about this that has continuity. We live in two different homes. Everything is different. Mm-hmm. The thing is, with children, we can still have continuity. We can have the same school that they go to. We can have similar childcare providers. We can continue with the activities that they love. Mm-hmm. We can be dependent and dependable on schedules. If we say we're going to pick somebody up at a certain time, be there to pick them up at that time. Mm-hmm. If we promise that we're going to do something, follow through on that. You are going to have two different households. You know that you and your spouse had probably different parenting styles. Everybody does. There's always one parent that might be a little more strict and on the rules, and one parent that is a little bit more, I'm going to go to activities and we're going to have fun. Mm-hmm. Now suddenly, you're both in charge of all of those things at your separate houses. Is there any way that you can overlap enough to be similar? So maybe we have a similar schedule of when homework gets done, and then maybe it's bath time, and then then we have a bedtime that's pretty similar. It might not be precisely exact. We're not looking for that. We're just kind of aiming for the same type of schedule. Yeah. If we create this continuity between the homes, if we create continuity of, hey, I used to like to go with, hanging out with my friends, going to the mall on Saturdays, and now suddenly Saturdays is somebody's time, I don't want to call it visitation, I call it parenting time. So we got to be sensitive that we don't want to totally subsume everything into the divorce. Parents have to work around their children a bit with this. Mm-hmm. They have to pay attention to what your children do in their lives, and anything that we can kind of keep the same, do it. So that's continuity. Does mm-hmm. that make sense?
It does. I mean, anything that parents can do, and I know people listening will often say, there's nothing that we agree on. Surely you can agree upon a bedtime.
Right.
Or that homework gets done by 7:00 or, different things like that, as well as, what kind of shows or games are appropriate, etc. Because there's just so many things that can lead to conflict between parents. But some can be common sense that you can keep consistent for the kids through the home, and then they really thrive with that.
By the way, let's also point out, even in a home where you don't have divorce, two mm-hmm. parents living in the same home, your children will find a way to exploit your differences. Mm-hmm. That's what they do. They're like, well, wait a second. If mom said this, can mm-hmm. I do that? You don't let your children use your divorce to gain advantages where they shouldn't gain advantages. So by being on the same page, it actually makes your life easier as a parent for mm-hmm. both of you. So 100% on that.
Yeah, even with intact families, I think people knew, or kids knew growing up, like who you're going to ask if you can go to that party or do this thing, that one parent was the easier parent. And so with divorce, that just sort of ends up becoming a bigger chasm, because the kids are going to assume the parents don't talk and take advantage of that sometimes. So as much as you guys can have consistent rules, kids aren't getting away with as much that you wouldn't want them to be getting away with. So the P is protection.
Yes.
So
P is protection. What are we protecting them from? The single biggest.
So the second P in the CPR is protection.
So with the P in protection, what we're talking about is protecting children from the divorce itself and the conflict. Mm-hmm. So research shows that the more your children are exposed to conflict in the divorce, the more adjustment problems that they have. And I think the best way to consider this is we don't want them involved with as much as they don't have to be involved with. Mm-hmm. They will have to be involved with some of it. We'll have to plan ahead with them where they have clothes, making sure they have what they need at both houses. Mm-hmm. That's going to be annoying to them. But what we don't want to have them involved with is the conflict. So when would we see conflict? We'd see conflict if you're on the phone talking to your spouse and you're like, why can't you be there? I don't understand, mm-hmm. You're going back and forth with each other. The worst type of conflict is when they're standing there, mm-hmm. usually at an exchange, and the parents are going at it with each other. That is horrible. Mm-hmm. And we want to avoid that at all costs.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what we're really trying to do is make sure they are not part of the conflict. The idea behind it is, look, you've got your own life to live, whether you're a third grader, and that is, I'm focused on, I just got a Rubik's Cube. I mean, do they still have those? But
I don't know.
I'm trying to solve
they do.
My son still likes all those Rubik's Cubes, and he's 22. But are they just living their life, or are they involved in this divorce? Mm-hmm. And let's think about it for a second. So why is it so bad to have conflict? I mean, obviously nobody likes to be around anybody fighting. Mm-hmm. But here's the thing. Your children are one half of each of you. Yeah. Their self-identity is formed by both parents. So when your child hears you being mean to their parent, their other parent, or saying something bad about them, there's an aspect of feeling bad about yourself. Mm-hmm. And kids, and we might talk about this later, they can develop what's called a loyalty conflict, where they're like, they kind of feel like they don't know who to choose between, mm-hmm. and it makes them very uncomfortable. So all of this, we want to protect them from the conflict.
Yeah,
don't
they shouldn't
involve them
feel
in
like
divorce.
they have to choose anybody.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And that goes to the reassurance.
Yeah. And so I think, people often don't understand sometimes how absorbent kids are to conflict. They're always mm-hmm. watching. You may think, oh, they're upstairs and they can't hear. They can.
Oh my God, they hear everything.
They can hear everything. They have the best ears possible. I would always tell my clients, if your kids are old enough, to at least be left in the home, if you're going to have a phone conversation, go to the mailbox. unless your mailbox is attached to your house. Yeah.
Or your car.
Yeah, or your car. Just make sure that you are out of earshot of the kids and protect them from that, because they're also very sensitive. You may not actually be having an argument. Maybe you're having a very business-like conversation with the co-parent, and the kids interpret things in a certain way. That's not as friendly as it was. They no longer say, I love you, different things like that. So as much as you can, shield them from that, or communicate in writing, text, or email without, obviously the kids being involved in those types of communications. And moving on to our R is the reassurance, the last part of CPR.
So the reassurance is that it is okay for them to have a relationship with both parents. This is key. If you do nothing else, even if your ex-spouse is making you nuts, you never cross the line of making the child feel bad about that parent, or that, questioning, like, am I going to get to see dad? Am I going to get to see mom? I'm missing mom. I just want to call her.
Yeah.
You know what? Absolutely. Let's do a FaceTime. You know what? You do FaceTime. I'm going to go downstairs. We have a lot of technology now that allows us to feel connected with people, even when we're not in the same room. And that's been a real benefit. It's not a substitution, obviously, for being with that person. But we want kids to always know it's okay to call. And you know what? You want to see, maybe I'll call dad and see if you can pop by and show him this award that you won. The more you are supporting that relationship, the more you find the willpower and the mindfulness to do away with your emotions and find ways to speak nicely about the other parent. Even, by the way, when they say or do something that is not great, and maybe your kid is annoyed at them, and God, how good does that feel? Like, I'm the favorite one right now. But you want to resist that urge. You want to say, you know what, I think dad was having a bad day. Like, I have a bad day, you have a bad day. Let's cut dad some slack on that. The more they see that continuous bit by bit of adding information to them, that mom and dad definitely, they're not married, but they definitely respect one another. They definitely care about one another. That is going to give your children permission to feel like it's absolutely fine to have a relationship. You're not trying to make mom feel better when she's sad by saying something bad about dad.
Right, because mom doesn't like that. That doesn't make her feel better. She shoots that down.
Exactly. So those are the CPRs. And when I talk to people, I add in an E, which doesn't work with the CPR, but I say CPR-E. And that has to do with emotional expression. So the reason I add that in is because the research has shown that most adult kids feel that nobody ever really cared about how they were feeling. And this isn't surprising, because for the people going through divorce, this is a huge life challenge. You're going through the stages of grief. Your emotions are everywhere. You're scared. You are trying to figure out what your future is. It feels all-encompassing as a human being. The problem is the kids, they have those same feelings, but maybe the focus, no one has time to focus on what they're feeling, because they've got, they have so much other stuff that they have to do as an adult. So I think that as parents, if you can really make it a conscious choice to talk to your kids about how they're feeling, and don't laugh, because anybody who has kids is listening to this and they're going, oh my God,
they're going to answer the question.
Feeling. They say fine.
Fine.
One word.
Yes, no, fine.
There.
Yes.
So I'm not talking about that type of direct question like, oh, so how are you feeling? How is this going for you? It's more like kind of guessing the emotion, opening up the opportunity to have a conversation, and then sitting back and letting them talk. So your job as the parent is kind of like to open the door and then let them walk through. So you can guess the emotion, and it doesn't just have to be about the divorce or anything, but it can be, they get in the car and they're really quiet, or you knew they had a big presentation coming up and you're driving to school. You could say to them, my gosh, I know you've prepared a lot. I imagine you might be feeling a little bit nervous right now, or something. Like you're guessing how they're feeling.
Yeah.
And then they might start to talk. Same thing with the divorce and coming back and forth and different things that are impacting their life. You can guess what they're feeling, and maybe you're going to hit it correctly. And if they start talking, this is the biggest piece of advice: be quiet.
Yeah.
Don't say
anything. I think we all get very still
until they're done. Let them say everything, and then validate it. Validate what they're feeling. I totally get it. I would feel the same way. So just being heard, just expressing what you feel, that's enough. That helps the child feel that they've been heard, they've gotten it from the inside to the outside. I can tell you that in my first practical assignment that I had when I got my master's in social work, I think I'd been in social work school for about 2 weeks, and I certainly hadn't studied anything, and I was now going to be counseling people. And I was like, oh my gosh, what do I do here? And my supervisor said to me, she said, look, if nothing else, helping somebody get something from the inside to the outside, whether they're writing about it, drawing about it, or talking about it, is therapeutic. So as the parent, just helping your children identify feelings, bringing them out. We'll talk later in chapter 78 about how to deal with emotions and how to help process them through, because emotions are very much like the weather. They come, they go, but when we're in them, they feel very big and they feel like they're going to last forever. So learning the skills for helping yourself deal with emotions will also help your children deal with emotions. Helping your children start to identify and label what they're feeling will turn them into adults who actually pay attention to how they're feeling.
Yeah.
And as we'll learn in 78, maybe they're not going to be entangled with their emotions and just sort of either wallowing or doing whatever the emotion feels right to do.
Yeah.
Maybe they're not going to be the one avoiding their emotion, watching, an entire season of something on Netflix. Maybe they're going to interact with their emotion. Maybe they're going to interact with it. So again, this idea of emotional expression is key. So just to sum it up, continuity, protection, reassurance, emotional expression. Every child is going to experience divorce in a different way. But if you do those things as a starting point, you're going to exponentially improve the way they experience the divorce.
Absolutely.
So,
and I'm going to add a little sidecar tip onto all of that. I often see you might have the parties that go through the divorce are on the same page about all of these different, ways that they're going to handle things. You need to make sure when you bring in a new partner to the situation that you are also saying to them, hey, we don't speak badly about, the other party in front of the children. If you want to talk to me about this situation, we need to step outside. Don't say that in front of the kids. And that extends to family members as well. It's really hard
just thinking that.
To control other people.
Grandma.
It's Thanksgiving, things are happening, people just say things and don't have the same awareness of the children that you do. They're very loyal, they love you, but it is your responsibility as a parent to, just to say, Grandma, we don't, talk about that over the kids. If you want to, talk about that, let's go step in the garage, or, whatever the situation is. That is your responsibility as well, to make sure that other people are also respecting these rules, because kids are very sensitive to that. Their little antenna is going to go up. They're going to really absorb that. So always just make sure not just you are doing this, but you're trying to guide other people in their life down for these rules as well.
And you know what, Tracy, there's such an easy way to do that as well. So you basically are proactive. So before Thanksgiving, before anything, while the divorce is going on, obviously you might not have a new partner, and that person you would talk about, things when it was right. But family, especially moms who are like, you hurt my son, you hurt my daughter, they're going to be more sensitive on your behalf. And you have to tell them, hey, I know where you're coming from, and I know it's from a place of love, but we are all focused on our child here. And so this is how we're going to do it. And I'm going to need you to do it as well. So kind of like when you would take your children to the park and you tell them before you got there, like, I'm going to give you a 5-minute warning. This is what's going to happen. You do the same thing for your family members.
You give grandma that warning.
You give grandma the 5-minute warning.
And sometimes that's hard to do because that may not be the relationship that you have with other family members, that you are like sort of telling them what to do and how to behave. But in this situation, it's time to just change the rules on that a little bit. You know, just like some people don't allow people to wear shoes in their house, it's the same type of thing. Hey, when you come into this house, these are the rules that we have here. And there's certainly a good way to convey that and to create this little, you know, bubble of protection for the kids.
And Tracy, I want to just mention one more thing on that. So another aspect of creating emotional expression is to create a calm environment for it. So what you were just talking about, having that feeling in your house of calmness, because divorce feels chaotic. And so if you can have a calm environment where your children are existing in, their temperature is going to come down, their heart rates are going to come down. So I think that's a great analogy about the shoes. You know, when you enter this house, this is a house of calm, and this is what we're all aiming for. Yeah.
I'm sure people listening to this are going to want to work with you and get the services that you provide so well. So what is the best way for people to connect with you?
They can reach out to me at Canaan Law Group, which is in Las Vegas. The phone number is 702-823-4900, or you can email me. My email is Dara, Dara, at CanaanLawGroup.com. So that's Kainen and then Law Group. Yeah. And you know, I would also throw out to any listener, all of my clients that I work with, the very first thing we do is we get them signed up for the Happier Meditation app. And I do this because there's an awesome course on there called Emotions by Oren Sofer. And it's such a great toolkit to start gaining emotional agility and not feeling, you know, controlled by your emotions. So if anybody would like, I have a 50% discount. So if anybody would like that, I'd be happy to forward that to them as well, wherever they are.
That's wonderful.
Just want to help people get through this in the best way possible.
And if you're driving and you're like, I was not able to write all of that down, just save this episode, subscribe to the podcast, and you will find Dara's information in the show notes. You can also head to amicableddivorcenetwork.com or divorceamicably.com, and you will find her in our membership directory. Dara, thank you for all that you do helping clients divorce well.
Thank you so much for having me.